This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. He speaks to the geeks and the musical freaks, but sometimes popular but mostly a freak because he's James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm at my place right now in Brooklyn.
You're quite nomadic, aren't you? You've jumped around a lot. Is Brooklyn? Does that feel like home for the foreseeable future?
No, I didn't think it would either. Because yeah, you're right. I do like to move around. I have no problem with just kind of moving around every few years. I'm originally from Mississippi, and I wanted to get out of Mississippi after I finished school. So I moved to Nashville. And then that was a little bit too similar to home. I was like, I need a complete vibe shift. So I knew New York would be that. I had some friends that lived here. They were encouraging me to come up here. And I've never really had like the desire or dream to live in New York. I think it seems really overwhelming, and it is overwhelming. But, I'm like 26 now. So I figure when I look back, it'll be nice to have that era as a memory. So yeah, I've been here for like a year and a half now. Already kind of thinking about the next step, but
right.
It's all about just having fun for now, having a good time. But yeah,
every time I meet time I meet anyone who lives in Brooklyn, I always feel the urge to just shout at them, "Where's Brooklyn at? Where's Brooklyn at?" Like this song, obviously. That was the joke. Tell me about Mississippi. I've seen you. I read you say that you were pleased to get out the South. Why was that?
Well, I grew up there and I spent all my time there. So, I was just kind of curious to get out and see what other places were like naturally. I love Mississippi, I love where I'm from. It's a great place. It's the birthplace of American music, as it says on the sign. And it's nice to go back. It's hard to live there now because I have to travel a lot for work. There's not really like good airports and stuff like that there. So it's definitely helpful for me to like live in the same city as my management and live around other musicians, but I still love going back. I'll love it forever. Yeah, I've just been trying to like get a taste of other places, while I can. I'm sure in the future I'll have something that's forcing me to stay in one place. So I guess I'm kind of getting it out of my system now.
I was sort of waiting for a but then, actually, because, I suppose I sort of related to my own experience. I mean, whenever I talk about geography in the UK to an American, they're always baffled because, the country is like the size of a state. It's the size of Texas or whatever. So,
yeah.
But, all of this stuff is relative. And where I grew up, I was so ready to get to London because I felt like I wanted somewhere that was more tolerant. I felt like I wanted somewhere that there was more media culture. But, a lot of it was about tolerance. A lot of it was about I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like people were more open-minded. It was more diverse, etc., etc. And I guess as I've got older, I sort of have balanced that out with I actually kind of miss a lot of where I came from. I sort of crave it in a weird way. And I sort of got the impression you were going to say something similar about the South.
Yeah, those things are definitely there. Obviously historically, like that's been a fucking issue in Mississippi. I don't think it's like widely taught about very adequately. I think that a lot of people are just like missing historical context. I understand why people think the way that they do, but the way people think is kind of aggravating down there. The conversations you have can be frustrating, and when you got friends in other places that you feel like are a little more like-minded, it can be tempted to just like surround yourself with like-minded people. but then obviously like you're just with a bunch of people agreeing with each other. Is that necessarily a good thing? You know, who's to say?
Yeah.
Uh,
I,
yeah,
I think that's why I've arrived at a place of balance, really, which is that I kind of love where I'm from, and even the kind of the warts and the bruises that are on it. Because I don't like sort of living in a monoculture where everyone thinks the same way. I sort of think that's not very healthy for creativity and growing how you think. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I think a lot of the people from home, like, it would be a really healthy thing for their perspective if they had the opportunity to like get out and travel and like live different places. But obviously, that's like a really lucky and privileged thing that I've gotten to do. You know, I think it's healthy to just kind of live different places and meet different groups of people and be around all types of different shit. You know, it makes for like a healthier perspective overall. And you look at a lot of places down south, people get comfortable wherever they're from. People get really comfortable in their small communities, and then there's also a lot of fear mongering that comes on the news and stuff that makes them like, oh, I would never go to New York. I'd never go to Chicago. So they don't. They never meet those people. They just live off assumptions. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't hate these people for that. I totally get where they're coming from. And it's a matter of the things that they're being fed on TV and reading in the news and stuff. And so I see him as human. And I hope for a positive change. But, you know, like you were saying, sometimes smaller places, yeah, people have a harder time being progressive.
Yeah, but I mean, there's loads of upsides as well to those kinds of places, because I think that in many ways community is still strong. I think that's really important. I think, you know, you write quite a lot in your music about, you know, kind of isolation or loneliness, or that's certainly the feel, that kind of melancholy comes across in your music. And
Yeah.
I think that some of these places, you know, they have things that cities don't have. They have things that more metropolitan areas don't have. Also, in terms of the South, the food is fucking amazing. I don't know how I could give up the food that's in Mississippi
It's
and
so good.
Nashville. Yeah,
It's so
exactly.
good. And there's really nowhere to like get the fix here. You know, like if you're trying to get like a meat and three, some good soul food, it's such a novelty here that if you do find it, they're charging like insane prices.
Yeah, yeah. You sort of riffing on a bit of what we were talking about. You've got a song on the record. Irritatingly, I've got like a lyric sheet, but it doesn't have the song names next to it. So it's the song that starts "Poison in Your Mind," and
Oh yeah.
it's kind of this. You sort of talking a bit about this Bushwick echo chamber and kind of how when Twitter, and this is a bit of a, I don't quite know how I feel about this, but like when Twitter, quote unquote, became a free speech platform, how you were surprised to see that some of these beliefs that you thought had been resigned to the dustbin of history were still very prevalent. I just wanted to talk about that really, because I thought that had something to do with what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Poison. Yeah, I don't ever write like songs that are really political, but I guess that one kind of like rides the line. Uh yeah, like there's a lot of people. I feel like radicalization's kind of on the rise in different sectors in this country. And people, yeah, they exist inside of echo chambers. They only follow people that are saying things that affirm their pre-existing beliefs. And so they just get like so hyped up on their own beliefs to where, and then they have this team sports mentality where it feels like it's them versus the other side. And it's just not healthy. It's not good. So I was kind of thinking about that when I made that song, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean that song definitely I feel like sticks out in your discography and your songography. It feels like maybe a rare example of you turning the lens away from yourself and turning it outwards.
Yeah, I guess so. That one came to be really quickly. I made that song. It just kind of felt like it wrote itself. Just started it and ended it all in the same day. Uh, I like songs like that. They just kind of come together really organically and easily. I feel like they have a well-deserved place on the album versus something that gave me a hard time for a few weeks while I was making it, you know?
Well, this is the thing though. I mean, I should probably say, just for the benefit of the listeners before we move on, I mean, my general view on Twitter is that, in a way, because I'm a bit of a free speech guy, I almost prefer to know the reality of what people think. And I think in some ways, actually, when you look at what happened with Twitter, actually there was the suppression of ideas and views that I actually didn't think was healthy for a democracy. But at the same time, you absolutely got this tidal wave of hate that, I was surprised existed. And obviously there is the empowering of people with those views because they are rewarded with dopamine for their views being shared on that platform. But I guess it's that thing of like, you said a bit about your country. It does feel from the outside looking in that there's got to be a coming together of people who don't share the same views, or it's just going to tear itself apart.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely people have a hard time just like having regular discourse. I think having regular conversations. A lot of people just need to get outside. A lot of people just need to go somewhere where they can be around other people and communicate with them, and not just bunker down with their crew online that all agree the exact same thing. That's not healthy. We're gonna get worse and worse off progressively if that's how we continue to operate. I worry.
There's one of the things I find dead interesting about you is that quite often with musicians, when I talk to them, and there's a real kind of journey of like struggle and toil and things that kind of went wrong. And you really describe your ascendancy as it being quite seamless, like quite easy. And I don't think I've really met a musician that talks like that. Is that how you see it?
I've been really fortunate. I'm like really grateful for. I definitely put in some work at the beginning. I was like neglecting actual responsibilities like work and school and friendships and stuff because I was just so like hyper obsessed with like making songs and then submitting songs to playlists on Submit Hub, and it was just like kind of a gambling addiction intertwined with music because I was like paying money to submit songs to playlists and see if I could get them and stuff. So like I just kind of gamified it in a way that was really fun to me. Making the music was really fun to me. Putting it out there was really fun to me. And yeah, it wasn't like a legitimate operation until like a few years in. And it came at like a perfect time. I graduated school. It was the middle of the pandemic. I had no idea what I was going to do next. And there wasn't a lot of people hiring or anything. And right as I got in that moment, it just seemed like very lucky timing for me that the song, you know what I mean, started getting used by a lot of people on TikTok. And I didn't even have TikTok on my phone. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why my streams were going up. But right in the nick of time, people started to stream the music in a way that allowed me to like focus on that like it was a full-time job during the pandemic. So that was really lucky. I can't help but acknowledge how fortunate I've been with TikTok and also with Spotify. They've been very kind and generous to me. They put me in their playlists and they put me in their radio stations, and a lot of artists aren't so lucky. I wish that more artists got the treatment that I've gotten over the course of the past few years because it's really helpful. And I think I would kind of sound like a baby to sit here and complain about the Spotify payout rate and to complain about like how artists are being forced to make TikToks. That stuff kind of sucks, but I am, on the very privileged and lucky end of it. So I'm appreciative, for sure.
Yeah, I think when I speak to, I mean, how old are you?
26.
Yeah, so I'm 43. So my generation was very, we were, marketing was something that we hated the idea of. I'm not sure I kind of ever really did, but I remember watching like comedians like Bill Hicks talking about, I think he had a phrase, he had a joke that was basically like if you work in marketing or advertising, you should kill yourself. And that seems like such an archaic view. And I'm not sure I totally subscribed to it even at the time, but I probably played along because it just was, like I say, my generation's kind of view on things. But whenever I meet people your age who are musicians, it feels like they take real pleasure in almost what you say, almost in that gamification. of like how can you sort of play that system really, almost the idea of marketing, even if we don't describe it as that, is built into the idea of a creative in 2024. Is that what you're saying really?
Yeah, kind of like I don't necessarily love the way things are right now. I don't love how algorithmic everything is, and it feels like humans are almost being taken out of the equation of music discovery. I don't love that, but if I want a platform to speak about that, if I want a platform to give my opinion, like I kind of have to play their game a little bit. You kind of have to play their game a little bit. Uh, get fans, get listeners, get people coming to the shows, get people that like what you're doing, and then once you have that, maybe you can like try and switch things up and do things your own way, distribute things your own way. But if you try to do that from the very beginning with zero listeners or people that are even aware you exist, it might be a harder mission with no platform. And also, it's definitely good to build a nice, solid foundation, put the music out there. Before I even put music on Spotify, I put a lot of music out on SoundCloud. And the only reason I put it on Spotify was because people were like, "Can you please put this on Spotify so I can listen there?" So I think it's just building a strong foundation. Once you have the strong foundation that you build with the tools that are given to you, which right now is all this like algorithmic nonsense. You play that game for a few years, then you can kind of like you see these artists that after 5-10 years of success, like kind of get off of social media, and it doesn't even hurt their career. They stop doing interviews. They stop really trying to make themselves seen, and it doesn't even hurt their career. But I think that takes like the building of a foundation, and you kind of got to be a team player. You got to be willing to play the game that's being played right now to get there. So I'm trying.
I just want to tell all musicians who are listening to this that they shouldn't not do interviews, because then I would be fucked.
Yeah.
I need that to continue. But I know what you mean. I mean, it's almost kind of going back to what we were talking about Twitter. Loads of high-profile artists in the UK, literally this week, have deleted their Twitters because I think they've just gone, or Twitter handles. I think they've just gone, this is not worth the trouble. Like, and also that they are of a level that they can work it in other ways.
I don't think Twitter is a functional app for promoting music right now at all.
Yeah. No, I think I agree.
Yeah, ever since Elon Musk bought that app, it's gotten worse and worse every single day. And every time I get on there now, it's just like these like bot tweets of like videos of 9/11 or like horrible car crashes. It's so morbid. It's awful. Every time I get on Twitter, it's just like not even people. It's all just like AI bots tweeting pictures of cathedrals, and it'll be like architecture was so much more beautiful back then. It's all just like people. Robots complaining or posting morbid videos of like I'm not going to promote a tour on this app. Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, I think ultimately the thing that Elon Musk has forgotten with the purchasing of that platform is ultimately people want an element of pleasure and fun, and going like putting your hand into a viper's nest, putting your brain into a viper's nest every day. You can talk about free speech all you want, but ultimately people are not going to want to come there if they feel miserable by doing it. That's the thing I think has been forgotten.
Yeah, he bought Twitter. He thought it was like this super left-wing site where speech was being suppressed, and so he took away all the rules. And then like slowly, one by one, he's having to find out why those rules existed and having to basically put them back. Yeah. And it's honestly hilarious that he wasted all that money, but it's like, it sucks because I love Twitter. I used to love Twitter, He took something away from all of us.
Yeah, I just think like anything, I think that if he hadn't have gone so, been such an absolutist about it, and just slightly kind of went, you know what, maybe we can just unscrew this slightly. But we live in an age of extremes, don't we?
Yeah.
Why do you, I mean, you said that about kind of the gamification of, I just love that phrase, so that's why I keep saying it.
I do too.
It's good, yeah. You were saying about that, and that's great. But do you ever think about why your music has resonated? Particularly, what I mean? Like, if I have a little scroll through TikTok, which I don't do very often because I'm 43, it's amazing the amount of videos that has been the bed for the videos that creators have they've made videos. particularly like films from scenes from movies. Like there's there's loads of TikToks I saw today that were clips from Joker with that song in the background. Do you ever think, why is this resonating with people?
Yeah, I definitely wonder that because it's like escaped the realm of things I even know about. I see it in the background of like anime shows I've never heard of. I see it in the background of like video games I would have never heard of if it weren't for the TikTok with my song in it. And I'm like, this is a world I would have never even known existed if I didn't hear my song uh over it. And it's cool, you know, learned about a lot of cool stuff, seen a lot of Joker content as a byproduct, like you mentioned.
But
Yeah,
why is that? What is it about? You know, I'm almost like I don't want to say your music's sad, but it's wistful. And I wonder whether there's something about, you know, young people who live on those platforms, that they feel a certain sense of sort of demoralization about their lives or where we're at, and your music is the soundtrack they found for that.
People describe it as like nostalgic a lot. So I try to lean into that a bit. Like when I first started the project, I was like, I want to do songs that like with things people have never heard before. It's gonna have weird, confusing time signatures. It's gonna be crazy chord progressions that people aren't used to hearing. It's gonna be wild melodies that are all over the place. And then I realized I'm not really good at like writing or making that type of music. And the type of stuff that I enjoy is mostly simple chords, simple like traditional arrangements that are based in tradition and are commonly done. I like things that kind of like are a little bit predictable and a little bit poppy, but just with some type of unique angle on it. So instead of trying to create something that's super hyper original and no one's ever heard anything like this before, it's easier and more fun for me to like create something that's nostalgic, something that like rings a bell from something you've heard in the past, but then you tweak it, you change it a little bit so it's not just a completely copy of something that you love from the past. You know, you think of it, you think of that thing from the past, and you try to like add your own little twist, add your own angle to it, and you can like tap into that nostalgia. People hear it and it rings a bell in the back of their mind. They're like, oh man, this reminds me of a lot of stuff that I love. So I try to infuse that into it a little bit, like certain things that I just know people will like because
I
it's been done and people liked it.
yeah, I once, this is going to sound like a name drop, but I once interviewed Fall Out Boy, and Pete Wentz said that he thought all great art was people trying to rip something off and doing it incorrectly, and therefore
Yeah.
making something new. And I think there is something in that, but that nostalgia element's really interesting as well, because as an old man, I would say nostalgia is quite recent for you. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's not that long ago,
totally.
right? That's pretty. I mean, do you think people your age are getting nostalgic quicker than maybe they did at one point?
I mean, like I was born in '97, but I still watch a lot of stuff and listen to a lot of stuff from like the '80s and '90s. So I can still like feel that nostalgia that older people might be feeling, just via the movies and the pictures and stuff. I can kind of get the vibe of like and tap into that, you know. Uh, I don't know. In terms of music, like I love stuff that sounds really futuristic, and I love stuff that sounds old. But I guess the main stuff I don't listen to is stuff that sounds like it was made like this year.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because on all of my kind of, when I've been reading about you today, I I haven't really sort of heard you talk about influences very much, and I don't normally ask musicians about influences because I just think it's a bit boring, really. But I am interested in knowing almost like what were the music makers that made you want to make music?
Um, they're kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. I love JJ Kell. He's like one of my favorite guitar players, and he was kind of doing everything at home from his living room at a time way before people were really doing that. Just living in a trailer out in the middle of the desert making music. I think that was sick. So he's kind of always been an icon to me. Uh, I love George Benson and his guitar playing. It's just like
Wow.
uh, right up my alley in terms of how he plays guitar. Uh, And then like 90s, I love bands like The Cry. I love bands like Galaxy 500. I love things with tons of reverb and spaciness.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then more recently, I guess I like I just like DIY musicians that do everything themselves. You know, Youth Lagoon was one of my favorite people to listen to growing up. Uh,
These are some deep cuts, man.
this is just random. Like whenever I try to think of artists, it's like every artist I've ever heard of just starts screaming at once in my head, and I can't pick one. But yeah, just some random deep cuts.
That's
have
good.
been some favorites over the years.
I mean, to be honest, that makes sense. The people you named make sense. I just guessed. I guess I was. I guess I was thinking. I guess I was expecting some more kind of obvious names, but actually, there's some really good music there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people like Mac DeMarco kind of go without saying. You know, I grew up on him, and also just his sheer output is inspiring to me. Just because he comes off as such a goofy, like slacker guy, but he's not. He's working insanely hard. So I guess that's inspiring in of itself to me.
Yeah, it's funny, that stuff. You know, it's like, you know, my favorite band when I was growing up was Nirvana, and like there would be all these conversations about Kurt Cobain being like this sort of slacker icon, and I'd just be like, that guy, he might say that, but like, you don't write songs like that or get to that level of success without being like insanely ambitious and putting the work in, you know?
Yeah, I feel like he's one of those people that probably can't stop working without feeling like guilt and stuff. You know, you'll find a lot of those people are like that.
Yeah, I think the people who are still putting out Nirvana demos from the archive are finding that, you know, is the fact that he wasn't he never wasn't making music. Listen, we're sort of at time, so let's leave it with this. But who's Rufus?
I wanted to create a character for this album. I wanted to create like a mascot of some sort. You know, I'm not gonna name an album Ryan, and I'm not gonna put me on the front cover, but I'll kind of deflect that to a made up thing so it doesn't feel as personal.
Oh, I like that.
You know, I don't know. I just wanted a little character to represent the album. The songs were kind of sporadic. The songs were all over the place. You know, I didn't necessarily make like a cohesive story from start to finish with that album. You know, it's kind of a bunch of individual episodes, kind of like a cartoon that resets at the beginning of each one. And since it's kind of like a cartoon that just kind of bounces around, the subject is non-linear, I figured give it a little cartoon mascot type name, you know, tie it all together.
I'm trying to think what Rufus looks like. Does he look like you?
Kind of. He looks like a little creepy mad scientist type guy. He's on the front cover.
Oh, right. I haven't seen the cover. Right. So that's Rufus. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Listen, before I go, I think the record's lovely. I've spent quite a bit of time with it, but today quite intensely. It's absolutely it's absolutely pissing it down, as we would say in Britain. So that was a nice sort of accompaniment. It felt kind of sad and whimsical, and as you say, nostalgic. And then I would look out the window, and it was just miserable. So it was it was a very pleasant addition to my life. So thank you for making that record.
Thank you. That's the goal. That was the goal, exactly how you described it. So it feels good to hear.
The goal was for you to make me feel sad and whimsical. Thank you for that.
Yeah, like a happy, sad. Like you can't. I want people to be confused whether to call it like a happy or sad song. Like it taps into both.
I like that. Ryan, thanks so much for your time, and thanks to Rufus too. Good luck with the record.
I appreciate you, James. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, dude. Bye bye.